here. Today's webinar is aimed at users who are new to Exo. We'll be covering the functions displayed on the screen. So we're going to have a look at your screens and setting up screens, setting up grids and how you can modify those grids, and how you can use those to search through your records, exporting to Excel by report or doing copies from your search screens. We'll be looking at setting up activities and reminders, and working through your debtors, creditors, stock, and contacts, how you enter new records, and how you can do searches on those transactions that have been processed, running reports, setting up dashboards, and how we can access the Education Center, and also we'll go through how you can keep an updated copy of the system in your test database, so if you need to check something before processing in live. Okay, so let's get started. So depending on the version of Exo that your company has got installed, you will access it through one of your icons, and they may look slightly different depending on the version that you're running. So I'm going to be logging in today with the admin user ID. So the screens may look slightly different to what you are seeing. You can have the option to connect to different companies, and usually there is a test company there as well, which you can access, or we can set up for you to access. All right, so logging into our test environment. All right, so if we have a look, you can see that you can access the different areas by using this graphical interface or workflow menu. So sales, everything to do with sales would be on the screen. Entering your debtors and creating your transactions, running reports, etc. Purchases, using the workflow menu, you can edit your creditors, you can check your transactions, you can process new transactions in the screen and run your reports. It will be the same with stock, creating or editing existing stock items, processing stock transactions, doing stock tags, bill of materials, etc. General ledger, creating new general ledger accounts, so where you post your cash book, your bank reconciliation, doing your journals, and having a look at your trial balance, etc. End of month processing. This is where you do your postings to the general ledger, so transactions that have been entered in sub-ledgers get posted through here, and you've got various reconciliation reports that you can run before you're doing your rollover. You can also access these menus by using these options by using the drop-down menus, debtors, creditors, so what we've seen earlier, your transaction processing through the screen, reports, and within your reports, for instance, under creditors, you've got further reports, debtors, etc. All right, so if we go back to our main menu, for instance, we'll go into maintain our debtors, and we'll have a look at the search screen, for instance. If you want to open up this screen, you can maximize that. And if you go to the right at the top of the screen, And unfortunately, oh no, that's all working. So right at the top of the screen, if you want to always open the screen fully maximized, you can maximize it and then go into the form position option and save it. So when I open that next time, it will open up in that format. When you go into your debtors or creditors, stock, GL, you'll see that it opens up a search screen to begin with. And at this stage, you can search for an existing record or you can create a new record. Various methods of searching. You can put in a name and enter it, and it will pick up anything within using that name. It will pick up any records associated with that. There are extended searches, so if you put something in here and you've got the extended search ticked, it does also check the additional columns for whatever you're searching for. Under your search mode at the top here, there's another search, which is an advanced search on debtors. And for instance, if you're looking for all your debtors that have got a certain value in an address field, you can go in and press the button and enter on the field that you want to do the search by. So let's go into perhaps address 3 and let's search for everything that has got Sydney in this field, and we do a search, and if we'll look at that particular column, so there are various ways of using this advanced search. So by pressing the button, you can add more search options if you like. You can use different filters. You can use the all and various different options. So that's quite handy, especially if you have got a large database that you're trying to search through. So back in your search grid, if you right-click on the grid header, you'll see some options come up where you can change, for instance, the way your grid is appearing. You've got an option here which is selecting visible columns. Most of your grids will have a list of visible columns. Not all the columns are usually ticked, just the columns you want to keep on your grids. Background noise. All right. All right. So that's very handy, especially when you're in the transaction fields and there are additional columns that you may not be aware of. You can go in and do the right click and select your visible columns and then save those column settings. So the next time you go in, you don't need to redo that. You can also select a column and you can hide a column by selecting that option. And you can also go in and restore the column defaults if you found you've done something incorrectly. Your grid ordering, if you want to change your grid around, you can go and lock that order, so that you don't need to redo that the next time you come in. The other thing you can do is if you're wanting to copy all your records, and this doesn't only just relate to this grid, but all your grids, you can copy your grid to clipboard, which is pretty handy. And if you go into Excel, that's going to load for us. You can do a paste, and very quick and easy way of getting your information out of Exo. All right, so another thing you can do is if there are columns that you want to include on your grid that you can't see and they don't appear under your visible columns to be selected, but it may be a column, for instance, selling price, which you may want included, or perhaps a salesperson that you want to be included on your grid that's not appearing. You can add those through and add them in through the configurator, and then they will appear as a new column to be selected when you go into the system. All right, so that's just a little bit about the grids. Let's go out of that, and let's have a quick look at your activities and tasks that you can set up. So under your task scheduler, you'll be able to see your calendar and your appointments, and you can set these up so when you log in, you can see exactly what's been assigned to your username. I've logged in with the admin account, and if I need to, I can go in and add a new activity. If I go into activities, I can add an appointment or a task, and I can link these through to a job, for instance. These fields here are searchable. So if I put in a question mark and press the tab key, it will open up all my companies that I've got on the system. So I can assign this task and link it to a company, can link it to a contact, I can link it to a particular job if we're running job costing. And what this does is it writes this record into my calendar, and it also writes this record onto the activities tab within the subledger. So, and on that particular debtor, creditor, job, or contact. So it's very much like Outlook. You can go and put in your details at the bottom and save and exit, and it will put in whatever activity at that time. And I can also, under the resources layout editor, I can go in and show other users' activities on my calendar. So once I've selected those users, I can go and add them onto my view. So that's a pretty handy little option there. All right. I think we'll start by going into our debtors and having a look at some of the basic settings within our debtors. All right, so our search field always opens when we come in. If we're wanting to create a new debtor, you'll see we have 3 tabs that are opened, and once we have entered information and save it, you will notice more tabs actually are available. What we'll do is we will go in and find data that's already been created. All right, so the code and the name are entered by you. You first of all have your company details, postal address, delivery addresses. If you're wanting to add additional delivery addresses, there's an option up here at the top. And email, phone number, and there's something down here called the extra fields. Extra fields can be added and can be defined within the configurator, and you can have a number of extra fields. The first three that you define will appear on the Details 1 tab. Otherwise, if you go into the extra fields, you can have a number of additional fields. Extra fields can be tick boxes, they can be drop-down menus, or they can be just free-form entries. So extra fields are very handy. If there isn't a standard field that's been made available, you can add in extra fields, and you can use these to report by. On the right-hand side of the screen, we've got details relating to sales. This will also be set up at implementation, how you want to categorize your debtors, primary groups or secondary groups, usually on a drop-down menu, so that you can assign your debtors to groups for reporting purposes. Salesperson, this is a list of your employees, so you can assign a salesperson specifically to that debtor, and whatever price list they should be picking up when you're processing transactions. You've got your credit terms at the bottom here, and you can enter a credit limit, and there is a currency option here. Once the data has been created and has transactions, you cannot change that currency, but if you had a debtor in a different currency, you could set it as a default, and that would come up whenever you're doing the transaction. There are some flags on the side here. This is an active debtor. You can't untick that if they have transactions. Open item debtor, and actually this debtor is on stop credit. So if we try to process a transaction for this debtor, it wouldn't let us. The options of whether you need to enter an order number or not, whether it's, you can use this as an account template when entering sales orders, allowing restricted goods and private account, etc. Private account, if that's ticked, you can set up users who can have access to private accounts, and then this data would be visible for them. Details 2, we have our payment details. So usually direct debit on data, and the bank details are entered. So these are just defaults, they can be changed. Discounts, discount percentages can be set, and social media details can also be entered on here. And these details will appear on the social tab. You've got ABN numbers which you can enter, and some statement information, so that you can specify whether this debtor will receive a statement by email, none, or whether it's going to be printed or if it's going to be emailed and printed. And when you do a data statement run, it will look at this and populate the mail shot that you're running with either whether it's going to be printed or emailed. The statement name can be different from the contact that you put on the details one, so it will use this particular email address for that email. Okay, we've got a contacts tab, so you can have a number of different contacts for this debtor. If you double click on that, you can see all the information and the email address for this specific contact. If we have a look at the transaction tab, got some options here where we can do a reverse sort of transactions, so that will reverse the sort by the date. We've got show only unallocated at this stage. So showing unallocated will show invoices that don't have any payments allocated to it. So if we untick that, we've also got an option here to group our transactions by period. So if we tick that, you'll see your months and you'll see the transactions. We don't have any transactions for this month, but for last month. So if we untick that, we'll see a list of our transactions, and if we show only unallocated, we'll see there's just that one particular one. This screen, if you right-click, you'll see you've got the same options here as we saw on the previous grid, and you can have a look at your visible columns. You'll see there are a few more and different options. So if you want to include a column which shows the age of the transaction, you could select that. And the other handy one to keep selected would be your general ledger batch number. So that will show you very quickly the batch number that's gone through to the general ledger. And there's the aging, that is the new one that we selected as well. So we could save that, and then that would appear each time we came in. If I'm on the transaction itself, and I right-click, there are a number of options that I can do. I can view the invoice at this stage. Okay. And I can print the invoice. If the transaction hasn't been posted, I could edit that invoice, but I see it's already been assigned, so I won't be able to do that. Okay. Reference fields. Reference fields can be changed on the header of the transaction. So, for instance, if you wanted to change your payment due date, you could. Obviously, if you've got transactions that have already been posted, you wouldn't be able to change the transaction date. That question that came up was, can I see that again?
Yep. Can you change the aging from months to days?
This aging here, this is the aging period. So, no, we can't. One would be last month, and the one would be 30 days, the last 30 days. If it was a 0, it would be current. If you wanted to create a duplicate invoice, you could select that option. So it would just make a duplicate of that, save you re-entering it. Generating a credit, generate a credit against that item. Journal, you can have a look at your margin pie chart. This is a handy one. You can view allocation information. So if you see something that has already been allocated, you can see that that invoice was allocated to that particular payment. So depending on your settings within in the configurator, how your user has been set up, you would be able to see certain things. You may not be able to generate credits from here, or you may not be able to edit invoices from here. It depends on your security settings. All right, so that's your transactions tab. If we have a look at our orders tab, these are all sales orders that are linked to this specific data, and you've got options to select whether they're fully processed or unprocessed, etc. If you right-click, you can print the order, and you could learn and have a look at the sales order history, whether that has been receipted. So you can also double-click on the transaction, and it will show you the original sales order. And I can't get right to the bottom. That's all right. Also, within your transactions, you'll see that there are different options available here at the top. So you can process a payment at this stage. You don't need to close this and go to another option. You can process your allocations. You can automatically allocate transactions to the older stage. You can create credit notes, invoice search, email, and if you want to refresh your view, you can also do that. You've got opportunities if you've got the CRM module installed, and you can create new activities in the screen, which will appear here. Right. So your extra fields, we touched on that. Your extra field screen may look very different to this one. Serial numbers associated with this data would give you a list of those. If you've got any discounts, pricing policies linked to this data, you could come in and have a look at these. Job costing, if there are any jobs associated with this particular data. You've got a notes tab, which is just a free form entry if you just wanted to type in some notes. History notes, similar to the notes tab. It's just a more formal way of entering new notes. So if you want to put in a history item, it saves it with a date, subject, and whoever created the note. So that's in your history notes. Your documents tab, quite handy to have, because what you can do is you can drag in documents. For instance, that document hopefully it's going to work for me. So I've just got any document there. I'll try and close. Okay. It's asking you if you want to save this as a link. So it's asking if you want to save that to save that file and save the link to that file, or if you want to save this document within the database. So obviously, if you're saving a lot of things into the database, it's going to grow quite large, or you can save it as a link only, so it just saves it to the link to that path. Obviously, if that path changes, then you won't be able to access that document anymore. So I'll just say I'll save it as a link at this stage, and you'll see you can go and access that at any time. excuse me. You can also, through Outlook, your emails that you have, you can drag those across into the Documents tab and save them as well, which is very handy. All right, you've got an Analysis tab, which shows you your sales for last year, and other tabs depending on whether you are using CRM, contacts, your activities that we looked at earlier, and serviceable units, which is another module if you've got that installed. Okay, so we'll go out of debtors for a minute. Creditors is very similar, and I won't go through all the different options. Just some things that are different. As you can see, you've got your tabs at the top, exactly the same. Details, company details. You've got your miscellaneous miscellaneous entries, your extra fields. This one over here is something that you don't have on the debtors, which is quite handy to make sure that it's set, which is your default invoice mode. You can select general ledger or stock, because if you are creating a new invoice, when you're creating a supplier invoice, you enter the invoice in a mode. So it's either a general ledger mode or a stock mode, and it can be a little bit confusing for new users when they come in and they're in a different mode and they're trying to search for a general ledger item and then they're in stock mode, and if they do a search and they're seeing stock items instead of general ledger items. So that's just something that should be aware of. Obviously, you can change it once you're into the invoice, but it's handy just to have that set as a default. So we've got our lead times, so date of order to when the items are being receipted. Remittances are important. If you're sending out remittances, you can put in a remittance contact.
Good morning, TFP. Laura speaking.
Hi, Laura.
Yeah, hello. So you're back. That's good. I'll just put you on speaker.
Sorry. Okay. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. So your remittance method, you can do an email, and you can print them. So very much like the statements, state mail shot, you can set these on as defaults to come up. Contacts, your transactions. Right-clicking will give you your different options, so generating a credit against the invoice, etc. Orders will show you your purchase orders associated with the supplier, so you can include fully processed or outstanding orders, etc. Serial numbers, any serial numbers associated with that creditor. All right. We'll go out of our purchases and into stock. Maintaining our stock items. If you're wanting to create a new stock item, go into an existing stock item. Have a look at some of the important fields. Again, you've got primary and secondary groups that you can assign your stock items to, and price groupings as well, if you've got that selected. Suppliers, you can associate a supplier onto that stock item and your units that you are buying that stock item in or transacting that stock item in. Whether it's serialized or a batched item, you have your cost prices, and this will also refer back to how this has been set up in your configurator. Obviously, you won't be able to change your average. And your selling prices, and you can have numerous selling prices, selling prices, price lists. We've got 9 set up for the stock item. You can set whether this is an active item, whether it's a lookup item. A lookup item is a non-stock item, so it won't keep track of stock quantities. This isn't a lookup item, and we can't change it because we do have we do have stock quantities. And whether it's restricted goods or batch tracked. Details 2, you've got minimum, maximum stock levels, and you can set these by your different locations. Okay, so these will have already been set up for you, but you may need to change your minimum and maximum stock levels. These should all be set up and defaulted through your extra fields. These are extra fields that we've set up in our demo system. You might have some similar ones, but probably relating to your business. If we go into our transactions again, we can group by period, or we can see all transactions listed. Right-clicking on the transaction allows you to view the source transaction, which is pretty handy. So it'll go into that job if you're running job costing, or the invoice. You can do reversal of the stock transaction. You can see stock going out of the system with your negatives and your positives, your purchase orders and receipts coming into the system. All right, so your orders screen under stock shows you your sales orders at the top, your purchase orders for this item, and transfer requests. It's some other functionality if you are using a program to do transfers. Jobs, any jobs that are linked to the stock item should show here. And if you're running works orders, notes again, history notes, documents, pretty much the same as the other two that we've already looked at. You can do filtering by primary group or by secondary group. Again, you can add columns onto here, and you can include inactive or doing the extensive search again. Okay, so let's have a look at doing some reports. So your reports, if you have a look at the different business flow menus, under reports, you can access your reports here, or you can go into the different options here and run your reports here. So depending on what report you're running, you will have different options which you can select. You can print the reports. You can preview them to the screen and then print them. You can export to a file. You can view the report as a grid. You can attach this report and send it to somebody as an email, and there's an option to do export to Excel in a different version. So have a look at, go and have a look at a stock report. Let's have a look at the stock transaction report. So once we've come in, we can see we've got a lot more options for this report. By selecting these checkboxes, we can go in and use these fields to do searches. We can deselect and run the report, and it won't use any of this criteria. So if we go in, change our date, for instance, and do a preview of the report, it should bring up all our stock transactions. And on this new version, you don't need to go out. You can actually change your criteria within the report. You can also view the report as a grid, which is very handy if you want to go and look at the data in Excel. What you would do is you would right-click on the header, you would copy this to clipboard, and as we saw earlier, we could just paste it into Excel. You don't need to have a look at that any further. So that's different ways of getting things into Excel, but copying and pasting the report grid or just running it into Excel here. All right. I want to have a quick look at this option here, which I'm sure most companies will have on their menus under your utilities. Easy maintenance. This option allows you to make a copy of your live database. Your live database will be listed here. It will usually be your company name _live, and your destination would be the company name _test. And what happens is if you come in here and you do a right click on the database you want to back up, there's an option to back up and restore. What this does is it backs the live company up and it restores it into the test database. And that's very handy if you want to try something and you don't want to process it directly into your test company, into your live company to start with. You can easily go and make a backup and restore it into test. So when you log in, you just select your test company and you've got an updated version of the system immediately. Another handy thing within easy maintenance is having a look at your current logins. So if you want to see who's in the system, you go to the live company and enter on the little plus button and you'll get a list. That's me. So we've got our 15 licenses and there's one person in. So you'll have a list of when that person logged in and when their last activity is. So if they need to get out, for instance, you can kick them out. This usually needs to be run as admin, so the administrator, but I just wanted to show you where that option was. It's under your utilities. All right, let's just have a look at where we're up to. Setting up screens, your grids and search functions. We've looked at exporting to Excel using your activities. working with debtors, creditors, we have a look at our contacts and our stock, running reports. I'll show you how to set up dashboards and access to the Education Centre. All right, so our dashboards is this space here that you're seeing within the different modules. If we have a look at analytics, it's another program that will open up, and this uses dashboards, which are snapshots of the data in your system at the moment, and it's all presented to you in a graphical manner. So we've got 6 standard tabs within analytics. You access that analytics through the reports. I went into reports and business analytics. You can also put it as an icon on your desktop. So these 6 are the standard, and we've added a few more. So it shows you a snapshot of your company data, and you can define how you want to view this, whether it's a report or whether it's a graph. And we'll have a look at our stock. You can see for stock, we've got a number of different dashboards or widgets, as we set them up as. So that is our business analytics, but in case you don't want to go into analytics to view that, you can also add dashboards and views to your standard screens. So we've got a screen called our sales workflow, which is the standard, and we've got a tab down at the bottom here, which gives us a list of our debtors, which is pretty handy. So instead of going and running a report, we can put that onto our screen. Now, to do that, we use these options over here. And we've got different layouts that we can set and we can save. So for our sales manager, this is his default when we come in, but we can create new screens and save them and call those up at any stage. So if we have a look at what is available, we can get a list of all the widgets that are available, and you can see the ones that have been selected: the debtors, overdue sales, sales orders, and margin versus target pivot table. Those have been selected. We can select more. For instance, we'll have a look at down here relating to customers. All right, so we can select any of our widgets, and once we've selected the widget, we can add this, just loading. We can add this onto our screen next to this workflow, or we can add it down as a tab. Now, it seems like it it's not liking that one. We're not having much luck with my system today. I was hoping I could just go into the analytics and show it to you there, because it seems to have stopped.
We might have a look at the Education Centre. in the meantime?
I'd like to, it might just be taking a little while to come up. I'm just going to stop that. Because it's quite handy to know how to place those. I'll show you in this module. It's exactly the same. You would go in and you would select whichever widgets you want displayed, and for instance we will select, let's just select one of those. It will come up hopefully, and by dragging this widget, if you wanted to place it to the right of this widget, you would use that little arrow key on the right, and it would add it in. If we found that a little crowded, and we wanted to add it to the bottom of the stock summary, for instance, the bottom tab, we could drag that, and we go to the stock summary tab, and if we place it in the center, it would add it as a tab. So it adds it as a tab to that widget. If we have a look at this little icon here, it shows us what has been selected, and if you remove it, or if you deselect it, it removed the tab. So that's pretty handy. It takes a little bit of practice to place them correctly, but all your widgets, all the ones that have been assigned to you, should all be available for selection. And these are all standard widgets that have been written by MYOB, but you can add more widgets, or we can add them for you, and you can add them to your desktop. The last thing I want to show you is just going into the Education Center, because it's pretty helpful. So under your Help option, you've got your Education Center, where you can access all the help files. You can see information on the releases, the Exo releases that are currently out. At the moment there's 2017.1, but you can check your version and see what was changed within that release. And you've got your user guides, all right, which are pretty helpful. You've got white papers. You can view all the available white papers, and that's a little bit more involved, information on pricing, on a number of things, but it does go into a little bit more detail. The other thing which is really helpful are these videos that they have, and you can review all the videos, and you can have a look at your debtors, creditors, non-stock, non-accounts, or inventory. So these are very handy, very short little videos. Setting up Exo Business, using your extra fields, your menus, business flow menus, etc. So they are short, but very helpful. Another thing I just wanted to show you under your Help menu is if you go into your Help and About, you can see exactly what version you're running. And you can also see which company you're working in. So if you would have your company name _live or _test. And also this information here, this is where your reports are kept. Your custom reports that have been modified live in this folder, and your master reports that come with the system are all saved in here. So if you later down the track, when you're wanting to modify reports, you would copy a report out of the master report, and you would copy it into your custom reports, and then through our report writer, through the report writer Clarity, you would modify the reports within that custom folder. I think that's probably where we're going to leave it today.
Does anybody have any other questions? If you do, you can either unmute your phones and ask them or send it through the chat box. Okay, well, if nobody has any other questions, then we might leave it there. If you do have any little questions you do want to ask, feel free to email them through to myself. You guys should have my email because I'm the one that's been sending out the webinar reminder emails to you. So thank you very much, and thank you very much for Tracy taking this one today.